If you want to find out what Rockford First is all about, then check out rockfordfirst.com. Go there to keep up with what's going on around Rockford First, get to know Pastor Jeremy DeWert, watch a creative video you saw in service, get directions, or even catch up on some past messages. It's a great resource that'll keep you connected to Rockford First.